Ambassador Kyung-ho sat in his private quarters aboard the UES Taeguk, staring at the formal document the Galactic Council had sent him. The terms were written in elegant script, but the words felt like poison on the page. The document was titled, Protected Species Designation, Terms and Conditions. As he read through it again, each line made him angrier. Article 1. All military vessels must be surrendered within 30 standard days. Article 2. No new military construction without Crystalline Confederacy approval. Article 3. All technological development must be supervised by appointed overseers. Article 4. Population growth must be regulated according to galactic standards. Article 5. No expansion beyond current solar system without permission. The list went on and on. By the time he finished reading, Kyung-ho understood the truth. This wasn't protection. It was slavery with fancy words. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called. Captain Haijin entered, her face serious. She was a compact woman with short black hair and intelligent eyes. In her 20 years of space service, she had never backed down from a fight. "Ambassador, I've been monitoring Council communications," she said, closing the door behind her. "They're not even trying to hide their contempt. I heard one of them say that humans should be grateful they're not being exterminated." Kyung-ho set the document aside. "What's your assessment of their military strength?" "Impressive, but not impossible," Ye-jin replied. "Their ships are advanced, but they're built for intimidation more than combat. Beautiful crystal hulls that probably shatter if you hit them hard enough. Energy weapons that look scary but might not have the stopping power of good old kinetic rounds. And their numbers? Large but spread thin across the galaxy. Most of their fleet is busy maintaining order on member worlds. The force here at Nexus Prime is probably only a small fraction of their total strength." Kyung-ho nodded slowly. "Send a message to Admiral Dongwoo. Full encryption. Tell him exactly what we've learned here." "Already done, sir. I also took the liberty of doing detailed scans of the station's defenses, just in case." "Good thinking. Captain, on Earth, the message arrived at Seoul Space Command in the middle of the night. Admiral Dongwoo was awakened by his aide, Colonel Tae-sung, who looked grim in the blue glow of the emergency lighting. Sir, priority message from Ambassador Kyung-ho. You need to see this immediately." Dongwoo pulled on his uniform and followed Tae-sung to the command center. The message was waiting on his private terminal, along with Captain Hae-jin's detailed scans of Nexus Prime. As he read through the Council's terms, Dongwoo felt his jaw tighten. He had served in the military for 40 years, had fought in 3 different wars, and had helped rebuild humanity's space presence after the resource wars. He had not spent his entire life defending human freedom just to hand it over to alien overlords. "Get me Fleet Commander So-young and General Tae-sung," he ordered. "Priority Alpha. I want them here within the hour." "Sir, it's 3 in the morning. I don't care if it's Christmas morning. Move." Within an hour, the 3 highest-ranking officers in humanity's military sat around a secure conference table. Fleet Commander So-young was a stern woman in her 50s who had overseen the construction of humanity's deep space facilities. General Tae-sung commanded the Orbital Defense Corps, the network of weapons platforms that protected Earth and the inner colonies. "You've all read the Council's terms," Dongwoo began without ceremony. "Opinions?" "Unacceptable," So-young said, immediately. "They want us to surrender our sovereignty and become their pets." "Worse than pets," Tae-sung added. "Pets are cared for. This is more like being livestock." Dongwoo leaned back in his chair. "I agree. The question is, what do we do about it?" So-young smiled grimly. "We show them why underestimating humans is a mistake." "Explain." "They think our diplomatic escort is representative of our full capabilities. 4 ships. They've probably calculated that our entire fleet could be destroyed by a single one of their battle groups." "And they're wrong?" "Very wrong." So-young activated the holographic display in the center of the table. It showed the Sol system, but not as the Council had seen it. Hidden bases appeared throughout the asteroid belt. Massive shipyards revealed themselves in Jupiter's radiation shadow. Weapon platforms became visible around every major planet and moon. For 50 years we've been building in secret, So Young explained. Ever since we achieved faster-than-light travel, we knew this day would come. We knew we'd meet older, more powerful species who would try to dominate us. Taesung pointed to a cluster of icons near Jupiter. These are the Titan shipyards, completely hidden from external sensors. We've been building our real fleet there. How real? Dongwu asked. 1,247 combat vessels, So Young replied, including 12 dreadnoughts, 47 carriers, and 300 heavy cruisers. Dongwu stared at the display. The council thinks we have 47 ships total. Let them keep thinking that. It's about to become their biggest mistake. What about the crews? We can't hide that many people. We don't have to. Most of the crews are volunteers from the colonies. People who grew up in space, who understand what's at stake. They've been training in secret for years. Dongwu thought about this for a long moment. What's our timeline? 6 hours to fully activate all systems, Taesung replied. 12 hours to have the full fleet ready for combat operations. 24 hours to reach Nexus Prime. Rules of engagement? So Young's expression hardened. They want to treat us like children who need to be spanked and sent to their rooms. I suggest we show them what happens when you threaten a human's family. Dongwu made his decision. Activate Protocol 7, full mobilization. I want every ship, every weapon, every soldier ready for deployment. Yes, sir. Both officers replied simultaneously. As they left the meeting, Dongwu remained behind, staring at the holographic display. He thought about the council members, sitting in their crystal tower, probably laughing about the primitive humans who didn't know their place. They would learn. Deep in the Titan shipyards, Fleet Admiral Ji-hoon received the activation order. He was a quiet man who had spent most of his career in the outer system, overseeing the secret construction projects. Around him, the massive shipyard came to life as thousands of technicians and crew members rushed to their stations. The Soul, his flagship, was a monster of steel and ceramics. 3 kilometers long and bristling with weapons, it was designed according to human military philosophy. If something was worth shooting, it was worth shooting a lot. Admiral, his aide reported. All ships report ready for deployment. The fleet is awaiting your orders. Ji-hoon nodded. Signal all ships, we depart in 18 hours, destination Nexus Prime. On the carrier Busan, Captain Min Seo was conducting final checks on her fighter squadrons. The pilots were young and eager, trained in tactics the galaxy had never seen. Human fighter doctrine emphasized speed, aggression, and the willingness to take risks that other species considered suicidal. Listen up, she told her squadron leaders. You're about to make history. The council thinks humans are primitive. They think we fight with sticks and stones. Show them what we really fight with. The pilots grinned. They had been waiting their entire careers for this moment. Back at Nexus Prime, Ambassador Kyung-ho received a coded message from Admiral Dongwu. It was short and simple. Help is coming. Stall for time. He smiled for the first time since arriving at the station. Time was something he could manage. He requested another meeting with the council, claiming he needed clarification on several points in their terms. Veltar agreed, probably expecting the human to beg for better conditions. Council Speaker, Kyung-ho said when he was brought before them again, my government has concerns about several aspects of your generous offer. Concerns? Veltar's crystal face showed annoyance. You are in no position to make demands, human. Not demands. Merely questions. For example, regarding the surrender of our military vessels. Would this include our defense platforms, our orbital stations, our merchant marine escort ships? The questions were trivial, but they required answers. Each answer led to more questions. Kyung-ho had been trained in diplomatic delaying tactics, and he used every one of them. Also, he continued, there's the matter of our colonies. We have settlements on 12 worlds. Would they also fall under crystalline confederacy oversight? Of course, Veltar replied impatiently. All human territories will be administered by our representatives. I see. And what about our artificial intelligences? We have several advanced AI systems that help manage our infrastructure. AIs will be shut down immediately. Artificial consciousness is forbidden to protected species. Kyung-ho nodded gravely. I must report these details to my government. They will need time to prepare for such extensive changes. How much time? Perhaps another day? These are complex matters. Veltar's crystal body flared with irritation. Very well, but no longer. We grow tired of human delays. As Kyung-ho left the chamber, he allowed himself another small smile. He had bought humanity the time it needed. In the hidden fleet, the final preparations were complete. Admiral Ji-hoon stood on the bridge of the Soul, surrounded by officers who had trained their entire careers for this moment. The first sign something was wrong came from the outer sensor stations around Nexus Prime. Technician Irix was monitoring the deep space scanners when his equipment started showing impossible readings. Supervisor, he called, his voice high with confusion. I'm getting massive space distortions at the edge of the system. Supervisor Kaal floated over to Irix's station, his jellyfish-like body pulsing with concern. Show me. The main display lit up with sensor data. At first it looked like random noise. Then the pattern became clear. Ships were jumping into the system. Lots of ships. How many? Kaal asked. I can't get an accurate count. The signatures are overlapping. At least 200. Maybe more. 200 ships? Kaal's body flashed red with alarm. That's impossible. Check your sensors. Irix ran a full diagnostic. Sensors are working perfectly, sir. Whatever's out there is real. Within minutes, the readings reached the Galactic Council chambers. Veltar was in the middle of reviewing trade agreements when his aide rushed into the room. Council speaker, urgent report from System Defense Command. A large fleet has just entered the outer system. Veltar looked up from his documents. Which member? Species, we weren't expecting any scheduled arrivals. Unknown, sir. The fleet composition doesn't match any known signatures. Then scan them properly. Find out who they are and what they want. We're trying, sir, but there are so many ships that our sensors can't get individual readings. Veltar's crystal form darkened. How many ships? Initial estimates suggest over 1,000, sir. 1,000. Veltar stood up so quickly that his chair fell over. That's larger than most member species' entire fleets. Get me a direct link to System Defense Command. The holographic display activated, showing Admiral Vex of the Nexus Defense Fleet. The old soldier looked worried, his scaled face tight with concentration. Admiral, what's your assessment? Veltar demanded. Unknown fleet, sir. They appeared simultaneously at multiple jump points. Perfect coordination. Military formation. They're heading straight for Nexus Prime. Who are they? Still trying to determine that, sir. Their ships don't match any design in our databases. Show me. The display changed to show long-range sensor, images of the approaching fleet. Veltar stared at the ships and felt a cold shock run through his crystal body. The vessels were blocky and angular, covered in armor and weapons. They looked brutal and primitive, but there were so many of them. Admiral, Veltar said slowly, do those ships remind you of anything? Admiral Vex studied the images more carefully. His eyes widened. Sir, they look like enlarged versions of human vessels. But that's impossible. Humans only have 47. Ships? Sir, I'm counting over 1,200 vessels in that fleet, and they're still coming. On the bridge of the UES Taeguk, Captain Hyejin watched her sensor display with satisfaction. The hidden human fleet was finally revealing itself, and the reaction from Nexus Prime was everything she had hoped for. Captain, her communications officer reported, we're receiving frantic transmissions from the station. They're trying to identify the incoming fleet. Let them wonder, Hyejin replied. Ambassador, are you seeing this? Ambassador Kyung-ho stood beside her, watching the tactical display. Magnificent. Admiral Dongwu wasn't exaggerating about our secret preparations. Should we respond to their hails? Not yet. Let them sweat for a while. The human fleet continued its approach to Nexus Prime. At its head was the dreadnought Sol, Admiral Ji Hoon's flagship. The massive ship was a statement of human engineering philosophy. If something was worth building, it was worth building big and heavily armed. On the Sol's bridge, Admiral Ji Hoon studied the tactical situation. Nexus Prime was well defended, but its defenses were designed to repel raiders and pirates, not a full fleet action. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "station defenses are powering up. I count 47 armed platforms and 63 patrol ships. Response time if they decide to attack? 17 minutes for their platforms to achieve firing position. 23 minutes for their patrol fleet to intercept us. More than enough time. Signal all ships. Maintain formation but prepare for combat. If they want to fight, we'll give them one they won't forget." Throughout the human fleet, similar conversations were taking place on hundreds of bridges. Captain Minseo aboard the carrier Busan was preparing her fighter squadrons for immediate launch. Captain Wu Jin's destroyer squadron was running final checks on their torpedo systems. Every ship in the fleet was ready for battle, but the most important conversation was taking place on a small communication ship hidden behind the moon of a distant planet. Admiral Dongwu himself was aboard, coordinating the entire operation from a mobile command center. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from Nexus Prime. The Galactic Council requests immediate identification and explanation for our fleet's presence. Put them through." Veltar's crystal face appeared on the main screen, and Dongwu could see the fear behind his attempts to look authoritative. "Unknown fleet, you have entered Galactic Council space without permission. Identify yourselves immediately, and state your intentions." Dongwu stepped forward so the camera could see him clearly. "This is Admiral Dongwu of the Terran Defense Force. I believe you know who we are." Veltar's crystal body flickered with shock. "Impossible. Humans only possess 47 ships." Council Speaker, "That was your first mistake. You sent spies to watch our home system, but you only saw what we wanted you to see. Did you really think a species paranoid enough to divide their own planet into 200 nations wouldn't have backup plans? This fleet, it cannot be human. Our intelligence reports—" "Your intelligence reports are garbage," Dongwu interrupted. "For 50 years we've been building and preparing in secret. Every asteroid belt in our space has been turned into a shipyard. Every gas giant has been surrounded by construction facilities. You saw our patrol fleet and assumed it was our entire navy. That was stupid." Veltar tried to regain his composure. "Even if you have more ships than we estimated, you are still vastly outnumbered. The Galactic Council commands millions of vessels across thousands of systems." "True," Dongwu agreed, "but those millions of vessels are scattered across your way. Empire maintaining order on your member worlds. How many do you have here? A few hundred at most? You dare threaten the Council?" "I'm not threatening anyone. I'm simply pointing out that you called us primitive. You said we were too weak to be partners. You offered to make us your pets." Dongwu's voice hardened. "We're here to correct your misconceptions." Behind Veltar, other council members were gathering around the communication station. Dongwu could see Grix, the rock creature who had laughed at human ships. He could see Lyra, the water dweller who had compared them to children. All of them looked confused and frightened. "What do you want?" Veltar asked. "Simple. We want you to reconsider your decision about humanity's status. We want to be treated as equals, not as pets." "And if we refuse?" Dongwu smiled coldly. "Then we'll demonstrate exactly why underestimating humans was the biggest mistake you could make." On the tactical displays throughout Nexus Prime, the situation was becoming clear. The human fleet wasn't just large, it was massive. Ship after ship continued to drop out of hyperspace, taking positions around the station. The newest arrivals were enormous vessels that dwarfed anything in the Council's fleet. "Sir," Admiral Vex reported to Veltar, "final count on the human fleet. 1,247 combat vessels, 12 dreadnoughts, each one larger than our biggest battleship." "How is this possible?" "Unknown, sir. But that's not the worst part." "What could be worse?" "Sir, our deep space sensors are picking up more signatures. Much more. It looks like they have a second wave coming." Veltar's crystal body went completely dark. A second wave? Yes, sir. At least 300 more vessels, including what appears to be mobile shipyards and construction platforms. The truth was dawning on the Council. Humans hadn't just built a secret fleet. They had built a secret civilization. While the galaxy's attention was focused on Earth and its small patrol force, humanity had been spreading throughout their solar system like a virus, turning every rock and gas cloud into part of their war machine. Council Speaker, came another report. The human ambassador is requesting another meeting. Veltar looked around at his fellow council members. They all looked as shocked as he felt. Grix's rocky face had lost its confident sneer. Lyra's tentacles were curled tight with fear. None of them had expected this. Very well, bring him to the emergency session chamber. When Ambassador Kyung-ho entered the room 20 minutes later, the entire Galactic Council was waiting for him. But their attitude had changed completely. Where before they had looked down on him from their high seats, now they were all at the same level sitting around a circular table. Ambassador, Veltar began carefully, it seems we may have underestimated your species' capabilities. Kyung-ho sat down calmly. Yes, you did. The question now is whether you're willing to admit that mistake. Your fleet is impressive, but surely you understand that attacking Nexus Prime would be suicidal. Even if you destroyed this station, the Council would respond with overwhelming force. Would they? Kyung-ho asked. Let me ask you something, Council Speaker. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going on for 3 hours. Ambassador Kyung-ho sat patiently at the table while the alien representatives argued among themselves. Their voices rose and fell in a dozen different languages, but the meaning was clear. They were scared. Finally, Veltar called for order. His crystal body was dim with stress, and his voice had lost its earlier arrogance. Ambassador Kyung-ho, he began, the Council has discussed your proposal. While we acknowledge that humanity possesses more military capability than previously estimated, we cannot simply ignore thousands of years of galactic law and tradition. Kyung-ho leaned forward slightly. What are you saying, Council Speaker? We are prepared to offer humanity associate member status. You would have a voice in Council decisions but not full voting rights. Your military would be limited to defensive operations only. This is a generous compromise. No. The simple word fell into the chamber like a stone. Veltar's crystal face flickered with surprise. No. We didn't come here to beg for scraps from your table, Kyung-ho said calmly. We came here seeking partnership between equals. Associate membership is just slavery with better decorations. Grix, the rock creature slammed his fist on the table. You dare make demands? Your entire species could be wiped out with a single battle fleet. Could it? Kyung-ho asked. Are you sure about that? Before anyone could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red as automated systems announced an incoming threat. Admiral Vex's voice crackled over the communication system. Council Speaker, urgent report. We have multiple ships jumping into the system. The Crystalline Confederacy's Grand Fleet has arrived. Veltar looked relieved for the first time since the human fleet had appeared. How many ships, Admiral? 237 vessels, sir, including the flagship Crystal Throne. Kyung-ho showed no emotion, but inwardly he smiled. The due. Council was about to make their second big mistake. High Admiral Kiss of the Crystalline Confederacy stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the tactical display. The Crystal Throne was a magnificent vessel, 3 kilometers long and built entirely from living crystal that could repair itself after battle damage. It was considered the most beautiful ship in the galaxy. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, we have the human fleet on our scanners. The numbers were correct, over 1,200 vessels. Kiss nodded. His crystal body was ancient and wise, marked with the scars of 100 battles. Size of their largest ships? The dreadnoughts are approximately 3.2 kilometers in length, heavily armored, massive weapon signatures. Primitive kinetic weapons? Yes, sir, but in very large numbers. Kiss studied the human formation. They had arranged their fleet in a defensive sphere around Nexus Prime, with their largest ships at the front and their carriers protected in the center. It was a competent formation, but nothing his fleet couldn't handle. "Signal the council," he ordered. "Tell them that High Admiral Kiss has arrived to deal with the human problem." On the Sol, Admiral Ji-hoon received the news of the crystalline fleet's arrival with grim satisfaction. He had been hoping the council would make exactly this mistake. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "enemy fleet is moving into attack formation. They're spreading out to surround us." "Let them," Ji-hoon replied. "Signal all ships. Condition red. Prepare for combat operations." Throughout the human fleet, the same orders were being given. Captain Min Seo aboard the carrier Busan launched her first wave of fighters. Captain Wu Jin's destroyer squadron moved into attack position. Every ship in the fleet prepared for the battle they had trained their entire careers to fight. But the most important preparations were happening on ships the crystalline fleet couldn't even see. Scattered throughout the asteroid belt around Nexus Prime were dozens of human stealth ships, invisible to normal sensors and waiting for their moment to strike. High Admiral Kiss opened communications to the human fleet. His ancient face appeared, on screens throughout both fleets, his crystal features showing centuries of authority. "Human vessels," he announced, "you have entered Galactic Council space illegally and threatened the peace of this system. I am High Admiral Kiss of the Crystalline Confederacy. Surrender immediately and you will be treated according to galactic law." Admiral Ji-hoon's response was broadcast on all frequencies. "High Admiral, this is Admiral Ji-hoon of the Terran Defense Force. We are here on a legitimate diplomatic mission. We have no desire for conflict, but we will defend ourselves if attacked. You are outnumbered and outgunned. Your primitive weapons cannot penetrate our crystal hulls. This is your final warning." "Thank you for the warning, Admiral. We'll keep it in mind." The communication ended and both fleets prepared for battle. The crystalline ships moved with elegant grace, their crystal hulls catching the light from Nexus Prime's star and throwing it back in rainbow patterns. They were beautiful to watch, like deadly jewels floating through space. The human ships, by contrast, looked brutal and functional. Gray metal hulls covered in armor plating and bristling with weapons. They had no beauty, no grace. They looked like what they were, tools built for war. High Admiral Kiss gave the order to attack at 14:32 Galactic Standard Time. The crystalline fleet opened fire with their plasma cannons, sending streams of superheated energy across space toward the human vessels. The beams were brilliant and deadly, capable of melting through most types of armor. Most types, but not all. The plasma beams struck the human ships and scattered harmlessly off their hulls. The humans had learned from their studies of galactic technology. Their armor was designed specifically to deflect energy weapons. "What?" Kiss stared at his tactical display in shock. "How are they deflecting our fire?" "Unknown, sir. Their armor seems to be specifically designed to counter plasma weapons." Before Kiss could respond, the human fleet returned fire, but they didn't use energy weapons. Instead, thousands of kinetic rounds, metal slugs accelerated to incredible speeds, streaked across space toward the crystalline ships. The crystal hulls, so effective against energy weapons, shattered like glass under the impact of solid projectiles. The first volley destroyed 17 crystalline ships outright and severely damaged 30 more. "Impossible," Kiss shouted. "Kinetic weapons are primitive, they can't be that effective." But they were. The humans had spent 50 years perfecting their kinetic weapons, making them faster, more accurate, and more devastating. Each slug hit with the force of a small nuclear weapon. "All ships evasive maneuvers," Kiss ordered. "Close to point-blank range where their projectiles won't have time to accelerate." It was a good strategy, but the humans had anticipated it. As the crystalline ships charged forward, the human carriers launched their fighters. Small, fast ships swarmed out to meet them, armed with short-range kinetic weapons and guided by pilots who had trained for exactly this scenario. Captain Min Seo watched from her bridge as her fighters engaged the enemy. "All squadrons, remember, your training, hit and run. Don't try to slug it out with the big ships." The space battle became a chaotic swirl of ships, weapons fire, and explosions. The crystalline fleet was learning that their technological advantages meant nothing against an enemy who had studied their weaknesses and designed specific counters. But the real surprise came when High Admiral Kiss ordered his ships to spread out and attempt to surround the human fleet. As the crystalline vessels moved into position, the human stealth ships revealed themselves. Dozens of invisible vessels suddenly appeared throughout the crystalline formation, firing kinetic rounds at point-blank range. The attack was devastating. In less than 5 minutes, 43 crystalline ships were destroyed and many more were crippled. "We're being ambushed," Kiss's tactical officer reported. "Enemy stealth ships throughout our formation. Where did they come from?" "Unknown, sir. They must have been hiding in the asteroid field." Kiss realized he had walked into a trap. The humans hadn't just brought a fleet, they had prepared the entire battlefield. Every asteroid, every piece of debris, every shadow in space had been turned into a potential weapon. Admiral Ji Hoon opened communications again. "Hi, Admiral Kiss, you seem to be having some difficulties. Would you like to reconsider your position?" "Never. All ships concentrate fire on their flagship." Every remaining crystalline ship turned their weapons on the Sol. The massive dreadnought was hit by dozens of plasma beams simultaneously. For a moment, it seemed like the concentrated fire would overwhelm even the human ship's defenses, but the Sol's armor held. The ship was built according to human military philosophy. If it was worth protecting, it was worth protecting with several layers of redundant systems. The plasma fire scorched the outer hull, but couldn't penetrate to the vital systems beneath. "Our turn," Ji-hoon said calmly. "All batteries target the crystal throne full spread." Every weapon on the Sol fired at once. Hundreds of kinetic rounds, each one as large as a small shuttle, streaked toward the crystalline flagship. Kiss had just enough time to realize what was happening before the projectiles hit. The crystal throne, the pride of the crystalline fleet, broke apart like a glass sculpture hit by a hammer. High Admiral Kiss and his entire crew were vaporized in seconds. The destruction of their flagship broke the crystalline fleet's spirit. 6 months after the Battle of Nexus Prime, the galaxy was a very different place. Ambassador Kyung-ho stood in the redesigned council chambers, watching as representatives from 47 different species took their seats around the new circular table. The old chamber had been torn down. The high platform where the original 12 council members had looked down on everyone else was gone. In its place was a simple round table where every species sat as equals. "The council will come to order," Kyung-ho announced. As the current council speaker, a position that rotated every 6 months among member species, he had the honor of opening today's session. The irony was not lost on him. 6 months ago, he had been dismissed as a representative of a primitive species. Now he was leading the most important governing body in known space. "First item on today's agenda," he continued, "is the petition for membership from the Vorthan Republic." The Vorthans were a young species much like humans had been. They had achieved faster-than-light travel only 20 years ago and had been exploring their local region ever since. Under the old council system, they would have been ignored or made into a protectorate. "Ambassador Thys of the Vorthan Republic, please present your case." A tall, thin alien with blue skin and large eyes stood up nervously. "Honored council members," she began, "my people seek to join the galactic community as equals. We offer our knowledge of bioengineering and our commitment to peaceful exploration." Veltar, who now sat as just one representative among many, shifted uncomfortably. "Council Speaker, the Vorthans have only a small fleet, 15 ships total. How can they contribute meaningfully to galactic security?" Kyung-ho smiled. "As I recall, Council Member Veltar, humans were once criticized for having only 47 ships. How did that work out for everyone?" Nervous laughter rippled around the table. The Battle of Nexus Prime had become legendary throughout the galaxy, and everyone knew the story of how humanity's small fleet had turned out to be the tip of a very large iceberg. "The question before us," Kyung-ho continued, "is not whether the Vorthans can help us fight wars. The question is whether they can help us prevent wars. Their expertise in biological sciences could be valuable in developing new medical treatments and food production techniques." The vote was unanimous. The Vorthans were welcomed as full members. It had been that way for months now. Species that had been ignored or bullied by the old council were finally being heard. The galaxy was discovering that diversity of thought and experience was more valuable than raw military power. After the council session ended, Kyung-ho walked to his office in the station's diplomatic section. The room was simple but comfortable, with a large window that looked out at the human fleet still stationed around Nexus Prime. Admiral Ji-hoon had wanted to withdraw the fleet months ago, but Kyung-ho had convinced him to leave a small force as a visible reminder of humanity's capabilities. It was a gentle form of deterrence. Speak softly, but keep a big stick visible. A chime announced a visitor. "Come in," Kyung-ho called. Admiral Yoon-ji entered, carrying a data tablet and looking pleased with herself. She was the new commander of the Terran Defense Initiative, humanity's contribution to galactic security. "Ambassador, I have good news. The Joint Patrol Program is exceeding all expectations." The Joint Patrol Program was one of Kyung-ho's proudest achievements. Instead of each species maintaining separate military forces, volunteer ships from multiple species work together to patrol trade routes and respond to emergencies. "How many species are participating now?" he asked. 23. And that's not the best part. Do you remember the Helix pirates that were terrorizing the Outer Rim? Kyung-ho nodded. The Helix pirates had been a problem for decades. The old council had been unable to stop them because their raids crossed multiple territorial boundaries, and no single species wanted to risk their ships outside their own space. "A joint patrol caught them 3 days ago," Yoon-ji continued. "A human destroyer, 2 Vorthan scouts, and a crystalline cruiser working together. They cornered the entire pirate fleet in the Dark Star Nebula." "Any casualties?" "None on our side. The pirates surrendered without firing a shot. Turns out that when you combine human aggressive tactics with crystalline shielding technology and Vorthan stealth systems, you get a very effective fighting force." Kyung-ho leaned back in his chair, satisfied. This was what he had envisioned when humanity first sought membership in the galactic community. Not domination, but cooperation. Not conquest, but partnership. Another chime announced another visitor. This time it was Veltar, looking much humbler than he had 6 months ago. "Ambassador Kyung-ho, do you have a moment?" "Of course, Council Member Veltar. Please sit down." Veltar's crystal body settled into a chair designed for his species. "I wanted to apologize." Kyung-ho raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For everything. For dismissing your species as primitive. For trying to make you into our pets. For not recognizing that wisdom and strength can come from unexpected places." "Apology accepted," Kyung-ho replied simply. "We all make mistakes. The important thing is learning from them." "I have learned," Veltar said earnestly. "The new council system is better than the old one in every way. More voices, more ideas, more solutions to problems we couldn't solve before. The galaxy is big enough for all of us." Kyung-ho agreed. The old system wasted the potential of billions of beings just because they came from young or small civilizations. Veltar nodded. "Speaking of potential, I have a proposal for you. The Crystalline Confederacy has been working on a new project, a deep space exploration initiative. We want to map and explore the regions beyond known space. We'd like humanity to be our partners in this endeavor." Kyung-ho was intrigued. "What kind of partnership?" "Your species has something we lack. The willingness to take risks and explore the unknown. Our ships are powerful, but our people have become cautious over the centuries. We need human boldness to push into truly uncharted territory. What would you need from us?" "Crews, officers. The kind of people who look at a map and see the blank spaces as opportunities instead of threats." Kyung-ho thought about this. Exploration had always been a driving force for humanity. Even now, with access to thousands of inhabited worlds, humans were still pushing outward, still looking for what lay beyond the next star. "I'll discuss it with Earth Command," he promised. "I think you'll find we're very interested in exploring new frontiers." Later that evening, Kyung-ho stood in his quarters looking out at the stars. A message from Earth was waiting on his personal communicator. He activated it, and Admiral Dongwoo's weathered face appeared. "Ambassador, I wanted to give you an update on the home situation." How are things, Admiral? Better than ever. The technology trades we've arranged through the Council have accelerated our development by decades. Our colonies are thriving, our people are prosperous, and our military is stronger than ever. Any problems with integration into galactic society? The opposite, actually. We've got more species wanting to establish embassies on Earth than we have space for. Apparently, everyone wants to study human innovation and adaptability. Kyung-ho chuckled. 6 months ago, they thought we were too primitive to matter. Now they want to learn from us. That's not the most interesting development, Dongwu continued. We've been contacted by 17 different species asking for military advisors. They want to learn human tactical doctrine. Are we providing them? Carefully. We're sharing defensive strategies and joint operation techniques. Nothing that could be used against us, but enough to help them protect themselves better. Good. The stronger our allies are, the safer we all are. Dongwu's expression grew serious. There's something else, Ambassador. Our deep space scouts have been picking up some unusual signals from the galactic edge. It looks like there might be other civilizations out there, ones that have never made contact with the Council. Hostile? Unknown. But given our experience with first contact, I think we should be prepared for anything. Kyung-ho nodded. Keep monitoring the situation, and Admiral, make sure our hidden fleets stay hidden. We might need that advantage again. Someday. Already taken care of. The galaxy thinks it knows all our secrets now, but we still have a few surprises in reserve. After the call ended, Kyung-ho returned to his window. The stars looked the same as they had 6 months ago, but everything else had changed. Humanity had not just joined galactic civilization, they had transformed it. The old system of a few dominant species controlling everyone else was gone. In its place was something new, a true community where every voice mattered, where problems were solved through cooperation instead of force, and where strength came from unity rather than domination. A soft knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Come in. Captain Hyojin entered, now promoted to Admiral and serving as Kyung-ho's military liaison. Ambassador, I thought you should know. We just received a message from the Outer Rim. 3 more species have requested protection under the Terran Defense Initiative. What kind of threat are they facing? Pirates, mostly. But there are also reports of some kind of unknown ships probing their borders. The descriptions don't match any known species in our databases. Kyung-ho frowned. Unknown ships? Could be related to the signals Admiral Dongwu mentioned, or it could be something else entirely. What's our response? Captain Wu Siak stood on the bridge of the UES Guardian, watching the star charts with growing concern. His ship was part of the joint patrol fleet that had been investigating the mysterious signals from the galactic edge. What they had found was disturbing. Captain, his tactical officer reported, we're picking up the same energy signatures as before, but they're stronger now. Much stronger. Wu Siak nodded grimly. For 3 weeks, his patrol group had been tracking unknown ships along the outer rim of known space. The vessels appeared briefly on sensors, then vanished before any visual contact could be made. But with each sighting, the energy readings grew more intense. Any word from the crystalline cruiser? Captain Vess reports similar readings on her sensors. She's requesting permission to investigate the 4th planet in this system. Denied. We stick together until we know what we're dealing with. The joint patrol consisted of 3 ships, Wu Siak's human destroyer Guardian, the crystalline cruiser Harmony under Captain Vess, and the Vorthan scout ship Whisper commanded by Captain Thyra. It was exactly the kind of cooperation that the new Galactic Council promoted, but Wu Siak was beginning to wish he had a full human battle group instead. Captain, came a voice from the communication station. Incoming message from the Whisper. Captain Thyra says her biosensors are detecting something unusual. Put her through. The main screen flickered to life, showing the blue-skinned Vorthan. Captain. Her large eyes were filled with worry. Captain Wu Siak, she began in accented but clear human language. My ship's biological scanners are picking up life signs that don't match any species in our databases. How many life signs? That's the problem. The readings are confused. Sometimes it shows thousands of individual beings. Sometimes it shows one massive organism. My instruments can't make sense of what they're detecting. Before Wusiak could respond, alarms began blaring throughout his ship. What's happening? He demanded. Sir, massive energy signature appearing directly ahead. Distance, 50,000 kilometers and closing. On screen. The star field in front of them shimmered like heat waves, and then something enormous appeared. Wusiak had seen many strange sights in his 20 years of space service, but nothing had prepared him for this. The ship, if it could be called a ship, was organic. It looked like a massive sea creature swimming through space, with smooth curves and flowing lines that seemed to pulse with internal light. It was at least 5 kilometers long and covered in what looked like scales or armor plates that shifted, color from black to deep purple to silver. By the ancestors, Captain Thyra whispered over the communication link. What is that thing? Captain Vess of the crystalline ship spoke next, her voice tight with fear. I'm detecting massive energy, build up within that vessel. It's powering weapons. Wusiak made a quick decision. All ships, defensive positions. Prepare for possible hostile contact. The 3 patrol ships moved into a triangular formation, their weapons powered but not yet targeted. Wusiak had learned from human military doctrine that showing strength was important, but firing first could turn a potential ally into a definite enemy. Open all communication frequencies, he ordered. All languages in our database. Sir, we're transmitting standard first contact protocols in 47 different languages. For several minutes, nothing happened. The alien vessel continued to approach, its organic surface pulsing with strange patterns of light. Then, without warning, it stopped dead in space. A voice filled the bridge, but it wasn't coming through the communication system. It was somehow speaking directly into their minds. Small ships, small minds. Why do you trespass in our hunting grounds? The voice was alien in ways that went beyond language. It carried emotions and thoughts that human minds weren't equipped to process. Several crew members staggered, holding their heads in pain. Wusiak forced himself to remain standing. This is Captain Wusiak of the Terran Defense Force. We are on a peaceful patrol mission. We mean no harm to you or your people. Terran? The mental voice carried amusement mixed with hunger. Another young species. Another source of sustenance. Sustenance? Wusiak didn't like the sound of that. Images flooded into his mind. Not words, but pure visual information. He saw star systems being stripped of all life. Planets turned into empty husks. Billions of beings consumed by creatures that existed as both individual organisms and collective hives. We are the devourers, the voice continued. We consume, we grow, we spread. Your galaxy looks delicious. The implications hit Wusiak like a physical blow. This wasn't a first contact situation with a potential new ally. This was a scouting mission by an invasion force. How many of your ships are in our galaxy? He asked, though he dreaded the answer. Ships? The mental laughter was cold and terrible. We are not like you, small mind. We do not build vessels. We are vessels. We grow ourselves to cross the void between galaxies. More images flooded in. Wusiak saw dozens of the organic ships moving through dark space, heading toward the galactic rim. Each one was massive, and each one contained thousands of the creatures that called themselves devourers. Captain, his weapons officer reported, voice shaking. I'm detecting weapon signatures unlike anything in our database. The energy output is, sir, it's off the charts. All ships prepare for immediate withdrawal, Wusiak ordered. We need to warn the Council. But before his ships could move, the Devourer vessel acted. Beams of sickly green energy lanced out, not at the patrol ships but at the nearby star. The beams struck the solar surface and began draining energy directly from the fusion core. What are they doing? Captain Vess demanded over the communication link. Feeding, Wusiak realized with horror. They're feeding on the star itself. As they watched, the star began to dim. Its bright yellow light faded to orange, then to red. The Devourer ship grew brighter as it absorbed the stellar energy, and new organic growths appeared along its hull. The planets, Captain Thyra whispered. There are inhabited worlds in this system. Wusok checked his star charts. 3 of the system's planets had life-bearing atmospheres. 2 were inhabited by primitive species that hadn't achieved spaceflight. As the star dimmed, those worlds would freeze. Everything on them would die. We have to stop them, he said. Captain, his tactical officer protested. Our weapons might not even scratch that thing. Then we'll find out. All ships target the creature's energy absorption apparatus. Concentrate fire on those green beams. The 3 patrol ships opened fire simultaneously. Human kinetic rounds, crystalline plasma beams, and Vorthon bioweapons all struck the Devourer vessel. The attacks caused some damage. Dark fluid began leaking from several wounds, but the creature barely seemed to notice. Annoying insects, the mental voice said. You will be consumed first. The organic ship turned toward them, and Wusok got his first clear look at what passed for weapons on a Devourer vessel. Openings appeared along the hull, not mechanical gun ports, but something more like mouths or wounds. From these apertures emerged streams of the same green energy that had been draining the star. Evasive maneuvers. Wusok shouted. His ship rolled to starboard just as a green beam passed through the space where it had been. The energy was so intense that it left a visible distortion in space itself. The crystalline cruiser Harmony wasn't as lucky. One of the green beams clipped its port wing, and the crystal structure began to dissolve. Captain Vess screamed over the communication system as her ship lost power and began drifting. Guardian to Harmony, Wusok called. Status report. Hull breach on 3 decks, Vess replied, her voice tight with pain. That beam, it didn't just damage our hull, it consumed part of it. The crystal matrix is being broken down at the EO molecular level. Wusok made a command decision that would have been impossible under the old council system. Instead of trying to retreat with all ships, he chose to sacrifice his own vessel to save the others. Whisper and Harmony, begin immediate withdrawal. Get back to council space and warn them about the Devourers. Captain Wusok, Thyra protested. We won't leave you behind. That's an order. Someone has to deliver this information to the council. The galaxy needs to know what's coming. And what about you? Wusok looked at his crew. They were scared but determined. Every one of them understood what was at stake. We're going to buy you some time, and maybe we'll teach these things that humans don't go down without a fight. The Guardian turned toward the massive Devourer ship, all weapons blazing. It was like a minnow attacking a whale, but sometimes the minnow could surprise you. Meanwhile, thousands of light years away, Ambassador Kyung-ho was finishing his morning briefing when an urgent message arrived from Admiral Dongwu on Earth. Ambassador, the message began. We've lost contact with Patrol Group 7. Their last transmission mentioned unknown contacts at the Galactic Rim. I'm dispatching additional forces to investigate, but I think you should prepare the Council for the possibility that we're facing a new and significant threat. Kyung-ho set down the message pad and walked to his window. The human fleet around Nexus Prime looked peaceful in the light of the station's star, but he knew that appearances could be deceiving. 6 months ago, the galaxy had learned not to underestimate humanity. Now it seemed the galaxy might face something that wouldn't.